He has 3 wives, and I think the biggest mystery about this whole novel is why any of them even like him. That when I talk about certain events, you guys are not gonna believe me and you're gonna think that this is like just some BS I'm making up. I swear to God, this is true, and I will prove it with screenshots of direct quotes. I came with the receipts. None of this is made up. There was an editor, there was a publisher, and there was me, the dumbass that decided to read this. This entire book was a hot mess, and we have a lot to go over. So let's get straight to the point. The Wives is a thriller book that was advertised as an instant New York Times bestseller. It got a lot of buzz when it first came out towards the end of 2019 or beginning of 2020. Actually, this happened before coronavirus started, which will be relevant later because I have a conspiracy theory about that. The story is about a main character named Thursday in a very unconventional relationship with her husband, Seth. She's just your average everyday girl who's in this modern day polygamist relationship where he shares 3 wives. Now you're probably thinking, how did she end up in this silly situation? Don't worry, because all will be revealed later, and it still won't make any sense. Seth is a guy who has less personality than vanilla ice cream, and he travels between the Pacific Northwest from Seattle to Portland to stay with each of his 3 wives throughout the week. Thursday is the second wife. There is Monday, who is his newest wife. And then there's Tuesday, who was his first wife. They have never met each other and they don't even know each other's names. All she really knows about the other 2 girls is what days of the week that they spend with him. So the husband is in Portland on Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday so that he can spend time with his other 2 wives. He later drives up to Seattle on Thursday to visit the main character. He only stays for 1 night before he has to leave the next morning to go back to work. Now, you're following this weird convoluted schedule. You might be wondering, if he has to go back for business, why does he need Friday through Sunday to travel? You might even go out of your way to look up on Google Maps like I did to see how long it takes to drive from Seattle to Portland. And without traffic, it is roughly around 2 hours and 44 minutes just to drive back and forth. And at this point, you might be wondering, how does this make any sense? That's a good question. Get the hell out of this video because logic is not a thing here. This is the situation. You better accept it now because it's only gonna go downhill from here. In the first paragraph of the beginning, it says, sometimes I wonder about the other days and if they wonder about me. That's how women are, right? Always wondering about each other. Curiosity and spite curling together in little emotional puddles. So already we are starting off strong. We are pitting women against each other because we all know that women are just in competition with each other all the time to vie for a man's affections. Love it. We love reading this type of story in 2020. The first chapter describes Thursday setting up for dinner to prepare for Seth to visit. She goes into great detail about the way that she's setting up dinner. In particular, she says, I almost knock over the vase of flowers as I place a fork next to a plate, a bouquet of the palest pink roses. I chose them for their sexual innuendo because when you're in a position like mine, being on top of your sexual game is of the utmost importance. Look at these delicate pink petals. Do they make you think of my clit? Good. Georgia O'Keeffe who? Joe Goldberg is quaking. I think she should be with him instead. I like how this woman is so thoughtful about every decoration and table piece that she's over here trying to create subliminal messaging to lure this man with all of these vagina flowers. She's dangling around his face. Look at this. Does it remind you of the clit? You will want the poussoir. Let your eyes follow the direction of these petals because they symbolize the labia. That, ladies, is how you get your man. Just a little pro tip here that you might not always see on Pinterest. Overall, it's an impressive table, but I am queen of presentation after all. Everything is just right, the way he likes it, and thus the way I like it. It's not that I don't have a personality, it's just that everything I am is reserved for him, as it should be. I know when I set a table and I see that it looks perfect, the first thing I think of is, damn, I'm definitely gonna get laid. I'm just gonna lay the placemat on the table, put a little dinner plate in the middle of the placemat, lay the napkin on the left of the plate, place the fork on the napkin. You know what? I'm feeling a little bit frisky, so I'm just gonna place a few coasters on the table for him to set the glass. That's how he knows he can do butt stuff with me. And I'm gonna put a little centerpiece in the middle here. Just little vagina flowers to top it off. And this will really drive a man crazy. She sets up the dinner table. Seth comes home. Now Thursday is practically quaking with excitement and jizzing all over the table because she has nothing else to live for. And then she lunges at him right away because time is so limited. We don't have any time to waste because he drove nearly 3 hours to get here and he's gonna drive another 3 hours to get back. back, and that makes perfect sense. I kiss the underside of his chin, then the tender spot beneath his ear, and then stand on my tiptoes to reach his mouth. I am thirsty for his attention, and my kiss is aggressive and deep. Despite all the vagina flowers that are peppered around the table, this scene is written so oddly clinically, as if she were a robot. I am thirsty for his attention. My kiss is aggressive and deep. That was a nice hello, he says. Two of his fingers play the knobs of my spine like a saxophone. Yes, this is exactly how you seduce a woman. You jam your fingers on her spine and play her like a saxophone. We've kissed and laughed and fucked drunk. Only with me. He hasn't done that with them. Silly, I know. I chose this life and it's not about competing. It's about providing. This is so true because whenever I meet a woman, I just keep a tally of how many vagina flowers she has versus how many I have, and it's basically a competition because that's what all women are here for. Whenever I meet a girl, my ovary basically becomes like a boxing glove and I'm ready to beat her ass. He sets his plate down and rubs the tips of his fingers together. They are glistening from the grease of the meat. I want to go over and put his fingers in my mouth, suck them clean. Ma'am? So you're telling me that your husband just came back from traveling back and forth and sleeping with multiple women, and now you're just ready to shove his fingers into your mouth and suck them? This is how the coronavirus happens. You better hope he washed his hands before you went around sucking his fingers and lapping up like a dog. Disgusting. And like I said, this book came out before coronavirus, so I am convinced that Thursday was patient zero, and that is why we are all under quarantine. This is a cautionary tale to wash your hands, practice good hygiene, and instead of sucking each other's fingers, just watch TV while you're eating dinner like a normal person. That's what I do because I'm a functional, normal human being. I've just been watching a bunch of shows while eating, and that's been a lot easier for me to do now that I have NordVPN, which is the sponsor of this video. Yes, that was a very smooth transition. They sponsored the Serpent and Dove video, then they realized how fun it is to sponsor videos of me reading bad books, so now they're back again. They're a VPN service that has over 5,000 servers in over 60 countries. It's a great way to unlock Netflix and your favorite entertainment sites. I have personally been using it because I started binge watching the Circle UK edition, but their website doesn't allow anyone outside of the UK to watch their episodes for free. So I literally set up NordVPN on my computer and changed the IP address to look like I was from the UK. I have never used a VPN before until they sponsored me last month. It was seriously so easy. I figured it out in less than 5 minutes. If you have multiple wives that you travel back and forth, they also help protect your data while you're traveling and in public, so that advertisers don't steal your information and see that you are a nasty hoe. They have 30-day money-back guarantee, and they have 24/7 customer service. You can get 70% off NordVPN, which is only $3.49 a month. Plus, you get an additional month for free at nordvpn.com/readwithcindy, or use my coupon readwithcindy. Thanks again to NordVPN for sponsoring this video, and I'm so sorry that you have to watch the rest of this because there's so much more that happens in this book. At this point, you're probably thinking, how did this whole scenario even happen in the first place? How did this main character agree to this and now she's sucking the meat sauce of this guy's fingers? Chapter 2 is basically the part where Thursday turns to the audience and is like, so you're probably wondering, how did I end up in this situation? It's a funny story, actually. A couple years ago, she was a nursing student studying for her exam. She was studying in a coffee shop when this guy, Seth, randomly decided to sit next to her and asked her if he could quiz her. She laughs and she says, you want to spend your Friday night quizzing a half-dead nursing student? And he says, sure. I figure if I get in your good graces, you won't say no when I ask you to have dinner with me. I remember frowning at him, wondering if it was a joke, like his buddies had sent him over to humiliate the sad girl in the corner. He was too handsome. His type never bothered with girls like me. While I certainly wasn't ugly, I was on the plain side. You know what? I'm just more impressed that a YA protagonist has somehow made her way into the body of a 20-something-year-old woman and is now in an adult thriller novel. We love a crossover story. Only if you like Mexican, he had said. I can't fall for a girl who doesn't like Mexican. I don't like Mexican, I told him, and he had grabbed at his heart like he was in pain. I laughed at the sight of him, a too handsome man pretending to have a heart attack in a coffee shop. Just kidding. What sort of messed up human doesn't like Mexican? I don't know how to explain this, but this just somehow feels racist. But I understand the necessity of this dialogue because I can clearly see the chemistry between these two already. They talk about such deep topics like whether someone likes Mexican food or not, and it's really an allegory for how he wants her taco. But little does she know that he has some enchiladas and some burritos on the side. In a way, this was all foreshadowing to this very moment. They go on a couple of dates, and on their fourth date, he finally reveals that he has a wife. She's obviously devastated. She leaves the restaurant. He chases after her and he says, it's not about sex. I don't have an addiction. It's just my parents are polygamists and my dad has 4 moms. You know what? I would have rather accepted the sex addiction. She's so confused and she's like, what do you mean? And he's like, I grew up in Utah. Then he goes on to explain that he's looking for another wife because his first wife, Tuesday, doesn't want any children, but he wants some. The conversation continues from there, and I'm like, wait, hold on. Your only explanation for why you're a polygamist is that you grew up in Utah? He literally just says that in one line, and then he moves on with the rest of the conversation. And I'm like, why? How did this explain anything? How did we move on from this conversation so quickly now to discuss the prospects of him having multiple wives? Oh, you're from Utah? Say no more. It all makes sense from here. You don't have to elaborate any further. I totally get the whole picture now. I mean, it's in the state slogan. In Utah, you gotta get the puta. Totally makes sense. Let's move forward with the conversation and talk about the prospects of our situation. I stared at him in shock. It was like being halfway down a guy's pants when he told you he was really a woman. Yes, that is exactly what the situation is like. Dating a polygamist is exactly like dating a transgender person. Thursday, more like turf day. Obviously, this is a lot of information for her to digest. She has to have some time and space to reconcile with the fact that he's a polygamist. I need some time and space to reconcile with the fact that Thursday is a turf. So they spend some time apart, but then she realizes that she can't stop thinking about him. But I liked him. I really, really liked him. There was something about him, a charisma, maybe, or a perceptiveness. I like how even the author struggles to think of what's so great about Seth. He has charisma, maybe? Question mark? He has 3 wives, and I think the biggest mystery about this whole novel is why any of them even like him. At no point is any personality trait prescribed to Seth, and he isn't even a sugar daddy to any of them. So I'm like, what's the point? He doesn't cook, he doesn't clean, he doesn't provide money for you. Obviously, he doesn't provide emotional support because he's bouncing all over the place. What good is he? How did he get all these 3 wives in the first place? She can't stop thinking about him, and then she ends up calling him up, and she's like, you know what? Let's do this. I don't care how good the dick is or how digmatized she is. It just doesn't make any sense to me. But for the sake of advancing the plot, we will go along with it. That's how she became the second wife. But how did he get his third wife? Well, funny you should ask. She did in fact get pregnant with Seth's baby at some point, but then she suffered a miscarriage, which left her extremely depressed and upset. That's when Seth decided to take a third and more fertile wife where the eggs are ripe for the fertilization, and she just agreed to it. There is a conversation that they've had at some point where Thursday suggests that they could have adopted, and then Seth just says, you know that's not what I want, and immediately dismisses it with no further explanation. She says, what if the same thing happens to Monday that happened to me? And then Seth gets really upset, and he says, why would you say that? That's a terrible thing to imagine. You're right, she really crossed the line here. I mean, we obviously know that the most devastating thing a woman can have is to not be able to give a biological baby. And in case you don't know, it is constantly referenced throughout the book how much of a failure Thursday feels because she's not able to give birth. She feels like she is not worthy enough as a woman and as a wife because she's not able to provide a family for him, and this is constantly emphasized throughout the story. And I think it's a really great read for women. You know, it's very relatable, it's not traumatizing or triggering at all. I don't know why this book wasn't in Oprah's book club because it really slaps. So that's their whole situation. Now you're caught up. Now let's talk about the other wives, which Thursday begins to discover more of throughout the story. All she knows about Monday, the third wife, is that she has a baby. She's very excited despite the sickness. I bought her one of those baby name books. She highlights the names she likes, and then we look through them when I see her. This is how I imagine it looked like when they were going over the names together. You can't tell me I'm wrong here. You know they have a chalkboard somewhere in the kitchen deliberating on which names they should pick for this. We find out her name because it's the next morning, Seth has left, and Thursday walks into Seth's closet and decides to smell his clothes because obviously she has nothing better to do. I mean, yeah, she's a nurse, but that's trivial stuff. That's nothing compared to how Seth smells like meat juice. While she's pressing his pants to her nose, she sees a piece of paper conveniently sticking out of his dress pant pocket. She sees that it is a doctor's bill with the name Hannah Ovar and an address in Oregon. She looks up Hannah on Facebook. She finds her profile. She discovers that Hannah is this beautiful, young, blonde, supermodel looking woman. So she decides to drive to Portland to see her for herself. She goes to the neighborhood and she walks around all these houses and she finds Hannah's house and she's just staring at it in awe of how perfect it is. And then she gets caught by Hannah, who's outside. Most people would look at her and be like, what the hell are you doing in front of my house and staring at it? But not Hannah. Hannah says, lovely, isn't it? It is, I agree, for lack of anything better to say. I add, Is it yours? Yes, she says brightly. My husband owned it before we got married. After the wedding, we did a remodel. So much work, she says, rolling her eyes. Luckily, it's what my husband does for a living, so he handled everything. Would you like to come in and see it? She asked suddenly. People often knock on the door and want a tour. I never knew that owning a house could make me so popular. First of all, this stranger just asked you if this house was yours. So why are you suddenly telling her your life story? Second of all, this is a stranger, so why are you inviting them to your house? I don't know what neighborhood you grew up in, but I have a hard time believing that people are just walking around knocking on your door to ask for a tour. But since Hannah is so nice and so welcoming, she gives a tour around the house. As they're going around the house, she shares more details about her husband and her life that nobody asked for. After the tour, Thursday notices that there are these shards of glass that are near a wall. She picks it up and gives it to Hannah just so that no one will step on it by accident, and Hannah becomes very embarrassed. She's like, oh, there must have been a photo on the wall and it got knocked off and it was an accident. Thanks for giving it to me. She reaches out for the glass shard, but as she pulls her hand away, Thursday notices a bunch of bruises that are on her arm that look like finger marks, which is super weird, but she decides to brush it off anyway. They decide to exchange phone numbers because, again, none of these women have any lives outside of Seth. And they decide to get brunch together the next day, where Thursday finds out that Hannah's husband has been hiding birth control pills from her. He also uses this as an opportunity to ask about the marks on Hannah's arm, but Hannah goes into this spiel about how it's complicated and he didn't mean it. He just grabbed her arm, but she bruises easily, and Thursday can't stop thinking about it. So later, when Thursday is back in Seattle and Seth meets her again, she gets into an intense conversation with him where he ends up kind of pushing her and her ear clips the side of her nightstand and she starts bleeding from her head. And so she feels the blood and she's thinking, oh my God, what's going on? As she starts to question, does she really know her husband? That is the introduction of Hannah, aka Monday. Later on, at some point, we discover the identity of Tuesday, which is Seth's original first wife. All she knows about Tuesday is that Seth and her met in sophomore year of college. They were both in law school. Even though Thursday doesn't know anything about Tuesday beyond those few facts, she's still very judgmental of her because she's a career woman. I don't like Tuesday. She's selfish. Her career takes the most dominant role in her life, the space I reserve for Seth. Yeah, fuck that bitch for trying to have a career establishing financial security. I bet she has her own 401k like the selfish bitch that she is. We have one rotating day that we take turns with, but it's our job to fill the week with things that aren't him. Stupid things for me. Pottery making, romance novels, and Netflix. But for Tuesday, it's her career. We have entire lives outside of our marriage. It's the only way to stay sane. Dude, that's so annoying. I hate it when I have my own hobbies outside of my husband and you have to live your own life and be independent and have your own agency. Like, what kind of world are we living in? Pizza for dinner again? I used to ask. He had admitted to me once that Tuesday was a takeout ordering girl rather than a cooking girl. How dare she not cook for her husband? Probably because she's so busy working at her job, doing her best every day to manage her team and coworkers, trying to make sure she has a living wage and be financially independent. What kind of monster is this? Thursday finds out the identity of Tuesday because one night when he is staying over, his phone lights up and she notices a text from a person named Regina. She Facebook stalks her and she finds out that Regina actually has a dating profile. She thinks about how weird it is that this woman is seeing other men. She doesn't think about how weird it is that she has decided to set up a fake dating profile to disguise herself as a man so she can talk to Regina. And they decide to flirt back and forth. They send each other messages. She's very judgmental of Regina for seeing other men despite being married to this guy who's seeing other women. She's listed as a 33-year-old divorcee from Utah. Her interests include hiking, sushi, reading autobiographies, and watching documentaries. What a bore. Thursday, you need to stop being a judgmental bitch because I like doing all those things. And you're right, I am a bore. Maybe this is why I'm not in a polygamous relationship, because I can barely handle having a relationship with one man altogether. So now she knows the identities of Monday and Tuesday. She gets into this obsessive spiral where she can't stop thinking about Hannah and Regina. She keeps on comparing herself to them because Regina is more successful than she will ever be, whereas Hannah is younger and prettier. And obviously, if you're a career woman or if you're a pretty blonde, those two things are mutually exclusive, which is a good thing that Seth has, separated it out. She continues continues texting Regina, and she continues hanging out with Hannah. Hannah still shows signs of abuse because of the weird marks that she has on her body. Her excuse that she reveals to Thursday is that he has a bunch of issues because when he was younger, he was touched inappropriately as a child. And that really messed him up. And now Thursday is thinking, how did I not know any of these things? And I'm thinking, how many trigger warnings are we gonna check mark off of this book? They're having this intense conversation over dinner. Thursday goes to the bathroom, but when she comes back, Hannah is gone. She is no longer at the table. All she has left behind is a voicemail to Thursday saying that she has to go back home. She can't do this anymore, but she sounds really scared. Thursday comes home and Seth is there, and he's like, I know what you've been doing. And he's really scary, and he starts lunging at her, and they get into a fight. He says stuff like, we had an arrangement. Why would you do that? We had an agreement. You wanted this. To which she replies, I wanted it because it was the only way to have you. You're hitting her. I saw the bruises. He shakes his head and he says, you're crazy. Listen to me. You're sick. It's happening again. ... Have you been taking your pills? Listen to me. I've been trying so hard. What we had was real, but things changed. After you lost the baby, you changed. I'm calling your doctor. Oh my God. Are we really gonna go down this route? Tell me we're not gonna go down this route, because this is halfway through the book. Surely there's gonna be a better plot twist than this. Thursday insists that this whole situation is real because she found Hannah's bill for the doctor in his pocket. Oh my God, he says. Oh my God. He shakes his head. When I was at the doctor, a woman checked out in front of me. She got distracted by her phone and walked out of the office without it. I ran it out to her, except once I was out there, I couldn't find her. She must have driven off. I stuffed it in my pocket. I should have turned it into the receptionist, but I didn't even think to do that. That's what you found. Oh, okay, that makes sense. Yeah, he just randomly picked up this doctor's note of this woman named Hannah and decided to keep it in his pocket. And that's how the silly little misunderstanding happened. What a convenient explanation. They start to fight. He's yelling at her and saying that she needs help because she's having delusions again. In the middle of their fight, he slams her to the ground and then she blacks out. That is how we get to the halfway point of this book. And I'm thinking, please God, do not make this plot twist about a crazy woman who decided to go crazy after she lost her baby. Please tell me there is more to the story than that. Well, she wakes up in the mental hospital. She discovers that her real name is Thursday. A doctor is explaining to her that she had attacked Seth and asks her if she remembers that. And she says, yes, I do remember that because he was hitting his other wife. And the doctor's like, bitch, what the fuck are you talking about? And she's like, my husband is a polygamist. He has 3 other wives, but we've never met each other because he takes turns throughout the week. I found out their names by investigating further. And then Seth comes in and explains to the doctor, his story is that he divorced Regina 3 years ago and he had left her for Thursday. And the doctor responds that Thursday is making accusations that he has 2 other wives that he refers to as Monday and Tuesday, to which Seth starts to get really embarrassed. Thursday is wondering, how is he going to explain himself out of this? There's no way he'll be able to explain why this is happening unless the author is making a very contrived plot. There's no way that will happen. Seth's answer is, it's a game we play. This thing Thursday and I would do to joke about all of my time spent away. I'd always come home on Thursday, and since her name is Thursday, we said there was a Monday and a Tuesday as well. I didn't know she took it this far. Oh, right. The game that you play with your significant other where you joke around about him sleeping with multiple wives. I forget that's a thing that couples do. You know, just these psychological mind games just to spice up the relationship. The thing is that you're very sick, Thursday. You need help. I tried to pretend it wasn't happening. I played your games. You changed after the baby ... Our baby died, Thursday. It wasn't your fault. It wasn't anyone's fault. There's a whole melodramatic conversation about it, and I'm just like, bitch, please do not let this be the plot twist. So I continue on for the rest of the book because I'm thinking, surely there's more to the story. And I was right. There was more to the story, but not in any of the ways that I thought of. The story drags on with her in the mental hospital being overly medicated and being in a haze. She realizes that the only way she can get out of the hospital is if she complies and pretends that she's getting more sane. So she's thinking, I know the truth, but I'm gonna pretend to make them think that I'm recovering. After she gets out of the mental hospital, she stays with Seth, who is with her because he feels very guilty about her condition. They're living together. They don't share the same bed because he just takes the couch, but she's getting very paranoid and she's thinking, I have to save Hannah. She gets into this whole mind game about how she can locate Hannah even though he has deleted all of her voicemails and taken away her phone, and she thinks that this is another way for him to control her. She ends up going to Hannah's house and she is so worried about her, but when Hannah shows up, she looks totally normal. And Hannah just stares at her like, Bitch, do I know you? I'm sorry, she says. I'm not sure I understand. Who are you here for? You, I say softly. I'm here for you. I don't know you, she says. Do you have the wrong house? What house number are you looking for? I know most of the people on the street. Thursday is so confused at this point because she notices her haircut is slightly different, her belly is flat so she doesn't seem pregnant, and she doesn't know what to do. When Hannah is not complying, that means it's time to talk to Regina. She goes to Regina's office and she says she has an appointment. When she talks to Regina, she explains that her husband is a polygamist, and she explains the situation about how he drives from Portland to Seattle. Regina is very calm throughout this whole questioning, and she asks, do the other wives know about you? And then Thursday's like, do you know, Regina? How much has he told you about me? And then Regina just stares back at her and she says, Thursday. She's like, oh my God, this is validation because Regina did know about me. But instead, Regina just acts disgusted, and she explains that Seth had contacted her and said that Thursday might come by. So that's how she already knew about Thursday. She tells Thursday that she's being delusional, and she kicks Thursday out of her office. So she goes back to Hannah's house, but then another woman enters who looks like she's a real estate agent. Hannah's not there, so Thursday is confused and she decides to leave. All the information at this point gets very muddled. There are times where she's asking Regina if she's ever met Seth's parents, but then Regina's like, Seth's parents are dead. There's also a point where she's asking about Hannah's house, but then her friend tells her that the house was registered under Thursday's name. So there's a lot of conflicting information I don't care enough to sort out for this video because there's already too many loose ends here. So we're gonna go stick with the main plot. She decides to go back to Regina, so she's kind of like a ping pong ball between the two. Seth really needs to step it up a little bit because she's the one who's traveling back and forth here. She goes back to Regina's office and she waits for Regina to exit the office, and she follows her back to her apartment. She shows up at the door and she says, let's talk. Regina somehow complies instead of calling the police. She explains a little bit about Seth's business not doing so well and about how she's helping out with money and their dog is not doing so well. This isn't really relevant information, so I don't know why we wasted our time with this, but she also divulges information about Seth's family. His father shot his mother and then turned the gun on himself. It was tragic, a huge blow to the family. I don't understand. When did they die? What about the other wives, their other children? We were already married when it happened. His father wasn't well. He had been diagnosed with schizophrenia when he was a boy, said God told him to do things. They were very ... religious. This book is just all over the goddamn place. There's polygamy, there's schizophrenia, there's delusions. I feel like this author just looked up a list of all the kind of mental health issues you could possibly have, and she just checkmarked them all. Later on, Regina calls Thursday and says, we need to talk. They meet at a diner. Regina tells her that the first year she and Seth were married, she had a miscarriage. And up until this point, she didn't know that Thursday also had a miscarriage. And she asks her, what do you remember about your miscarriage? What did you eat or what did you drink before you had the miscarriage? Thursday is trying to remember everything, and she's saying that Seth had given her tea. Regina's like, what kind of tea? And then Thursday's like, well, it was this tea that his mom gave to him, and it was supposed to help me with my nausea. Regina also says that she too was given some tea to drink before her miscarriage. So she finds out that the real tea is that Seth has been spiking their drinks in order for them to have a miscarriage. Why does he do that? I don't know. Honestly, it's hard for me to keep up with the story at some point. Later on, Regina calls Thursday from burner phone because she says that she has found Hannah. She warns Thursday that she thinks that he is going to do the same thing to Hannah. So then Thursday's like, oh my God, we need to save Hannah. And so she goes over to Hannah's location, but that's around the same time that Seth comes home. So now it's kind of like this weird, awkward family reunion that I think Jerry Springer would have a field day for. And she confronts Hannah and she's like, when I went to your house, you pretended like you didn't know me. Hannah gets nervous, and then she says, you came to our house pretending to be someone else and you were stalking us. So it turns out Hannah did know her, but she had to play pretend like she didn't know her. So it was kind of like you thought this was real, but it wasn't real, but it actually was real. There are so many times throughout the story where you think, okay, so this happened. No, wait, it didn't happen. Oh, no, wait, but it actually did happen, but this person was pretending it didn't happen, but it did happen. This book is basically like a fever dream that makes no sense whatsoever. Thursday says that Seth and her are still married, and Hannah's like, no, you're insane. She also still insists that she has bruises just because she bruises easily. And the reason why she had a black eye that Thursday saw in an earlier chapter was because they were having sex when it happened, and it was really an accident, but she was too embarrassed to say the real story. In the middle of sex, Seth had accidentally elbowed her in the eye, and that's just how it happened. Thursday is still in disbelief, and she's like, why are you still lying? Because He shoved me a long time ago when I clipped my ear on the nightstand, so I know that he's capable of hitting you. To which Seth replies, well, the reason why this happened was because Thursday was lunging at her and he tried to hold her off and then she fell, and that's how it happened. The rest of the conversation just gets more convoluted, so I'm just gonna read the dialogue. Why is my name on your house? The house you were living in belongs to me. Because it's your house, Thursday. Your grandmother left it to you. Why didn't you tell me it was her house? I was going to after I ended it with Thursday. I didn't want to upset you. The baby, ... Please, Hannah, it was all a mistake. I'm so sorry. A mistake with what? I scream. I'm your wife. No, Thursday, I hear from behind me. You're his mistress. And it turns out Regina shows up to the scene. You were the reason our marriage ended, she says. You had an affair with Seth. Regina told me everything, Thursday, Seth says. That you came to her office pretending to be someone else and that you forced your way into her home. Your crazy theories about how I caused your miscarriage and how you insisted my parents are alive. You told me your parents were alive. They didn't come to our wedding. You said it was because your father was in the hospital. No, he says, shaking his head slowly. That's why they didn't come to my wedding with Regina. I told you that story. No. Yes, Thursday. Oh my God. Oh my God, he says. Nobody knows what the fuck is going on. All I know is that Regina has basically revealed that she has set Thursday up. I called the police. I told them you were coming here with the intent to harm Seth or Hannah, that you had threatened to do so. You fucking bitch, I say, walking towards her. I don't know what I intend to do, but then she's in front of me and my hands are around her neck. They get into a fight. Seth tries to grab her and pull her away. She reaches for a gun and then she shoots Seth in the knee. Seth collapses on top of her. Regina screaming. Hannah's calling 911. It is a hot mess. Fade to black. And now we get to the conclusion of the story. Thursday is now medicated in a mental institution. Dr. Steinbridge is there and they say, you did not bear full responsibility for what happened. Seth is a troubled individual. The way he grew up, the abuse he claims he suffered. He cheated on both of his wives and emotionally manipulated you. He used you and played into your denial. But we aren't here to deal with Seth's issues. We're here to deal with yours. When you realized what was happening in your relationship with him, your mind created an alternate reality to deal with both the death of your unborn baby and the fact that Seth was moving on with someone else. Thursday asks, what about Seth's parents? They sent me cards. I have them. And the doctor explains, the cards were part of your case. Your attorney presented them to the jury as evidence when you pleaded guilty by reason of insanity. You wrote them. They brought in a handwriting analyst to prove it. You and Seth were never married. He had an affair with you when he was married to his first wife, Regina. Regina left him when she found out that he got you pregnant, but you lost the baby, and that caused you to enter a psychotic episode. He never claimed to be your husband, Thursday. When you came in last time, it's because Seth tried to end things with you. He admitted as much to me when I spoke to him privately that he was married to someone else and that you were his mistress. His wife, Hannah, figured out who you were on the last night you saw her. You attacked him when he told you it was over. I imagine he felt a sense of duty in visiting you here after that. But he came to pick me up. Take me home. No, the doctor says. Your father picked you up and took you home. I was there. Your father came, brought you clothes, stayed with you for a week until you crushed Ambien into his dinner and snuck out to drive to Portland. If you are confused about the doctor's explanation, I will try to break it down into simpler terms. When Thursday was home after Hannah disappeared from the restaurant and she got that weird voicemail, Seth had come home to confront her to tell her that it was over. And that's when she got kind of psycho and lunged after him to attack him. And then he accidentally clipped her ear in the nightstand, but he wasn't actually abusing her. She was just the one being crazy. Also, she thought that she came home after the mental hospital because Seth drove her back and Seth was staying with her, but it wasn't Seth. It was actually her father, because evidently we can read anything that happens in this book and then the author can just say, never mind. Everything that you saw in the second half of the book wasn't even real, and that's why she is now in a psychiatric hospital and she's not guilty by reason of insanity. The last scene of this, after you have finally caught up with what really happened in the book, assuming you understand what's happening in the book, is Regina comes for a visit. And Regina tries to explain why she set Thursday up in the first place. You ruined my life. I wanted you to pay for that. I knew you had issues with mental health, but I had no idea the stories you made up in your own head about the polygamy. I wanted to make you look crazy. I didn't know you were crazy. It's not my fault. How was I supposed to know that she was actually crazy? All she did was just stalk me to my office and then stalk me to my apartment and then claim that he was a polygamist while frothing at the mouth. Thursday is trying to find closure from the actual events that have happened throughout this hot mess of a book, and she thinks there's comfort in knowing he's in a wheelchair. He would not be able to hurt a woman physically again, and his days of cheating are over. Wait, so because he's in a wheelchair, you don't think he's gonna be sleeping with other women? We don't have time to unpack all of that. So moving on, it ends with her saying, I'm glad we got away from him. And Regina says, no. This isn't a little club. I'm not like you. She laughs. You're crazy. And then her laughter starts echoing in Thursday's ears, and she covers them with her palm. She starts fucking convulsing, and then she slams her head into Regina's nose, knocks Regina to her back. She grabs her head and slams it to the floor repeatedly. They're shouting everywhere. Someone's screaming and saying, help, she's going to kill her. And the last line says, I am helping. I'm helping myself. The end. The cheapest way that you can conclude a thriller story is to just call the woman crazy and to just say that everything that happened didn't actually happen. It's like the thriller version of saying it was all a dream, except it was all a hallucination. This bitch is just crazy. Everything fell under the umbrella of Thursday's mental illness. There were so many different triggering topics that were just crammed in for shock value. Polygamy, schizophrenia, mental illness, domestic abuse, sexual abuse. You don't even know which one is real or not. But then there's that weird implication of gaslighting domestic abuse survivors or sexual assault survivors or any mentally ill people. And she decided to make the main character an extremely unreliable narrator to the point where it just sucks out any tension of the narrative. If everyone is a liar, then why should you even read the book? Because nothing is real anyway. There could have been literally any other plot twist other than this one that would have made it so much better. I would have even accepted the plot twist of her thinking she's crazy, but she's actually not. And it turns out Seth is just orchestrating this whole thing to make her think she's crazy, because then at least that could have been like commentary on gaslighting for women who are in abusive relationships. It's very clear that Thursday is a very subservient wife who has nothing else going on in her life other than this man. But maybe there could have been a point to it. Like maybe it could have built up to commentary where a character is purposefully submissive so that she can develop later to have her own agency and independence. Especially considering that all three of these women have entered this relationship with Seth because they have self-esteem issues. That's how so many women end up in toxic relationships with a guy in the first place. The setup for this book is strange and intriguing because even though they're in a polygamous relationship, they never meet each other or know about each other so that they can avoid being jealous of one another. This book is making a point that women are stuck in this cycle of insecurity that's perpetuated by men, and therefore feeling like they have to fight to prove themselves and show that they're worthy. So wouldn't it be a better plot twist if the main character finds out that she was part of an experiment that was conducted by this hospital where they're trying to analyze how this woman would feel compared to all these other women, and once again have this be a commentary on how people often view women in relationships and their roles in relationships and how they often view like they have to compete against each other. Or a third plot twist, just for shits and giggles, what if it turns out that this whole time when she has been obsessing over Hannah, she's actually falling for her because she's starting to learn more about her. They're building their friendship whenever they hang out on their little brunches. And she realizes that she doesn't actually love Seth. She actually just thought she loved him because she was raised to believe that this is the kind of relationship that she should be in. And now she's discovering her own agency where she realizes Seth is an asshole and she and Hannah are the ones who are reclaiming their independence. And the two of them have to escape from Seth, but then they have to come back later to save Regina. I don't know. I'm just pulling stuff out of my ass right now. It's probably not that good, but I still think it would have been better than the actual plot twist that we ended up with. If you made it this far, thanks for watching. I hope you unsubscribe from my channel. Don't suck any people's fingers, especially if they have meat juice, because we need to practice better hygiene during this strange time. Goodbye.
When I touch down, you know that it won't be easy. Don't forget about everything that keeps me breathing. When I touch down, you know that it won't be easy.